Okay, guys, so today we're going to discuss the topic adverbs. And you may be asking yourself, what's an adverb? And basically, an adverb is a word that we are going to use in a sentence to say how probably are things or certain events to occur, okay, or to exist. So there are most common adverbs that we're going to see today, well, or at least in the unit, you can check them in the book as well, are definitely, perhaps, probably, and maybe, okay? Those are the adverbs. There are just four and they are really simple to use. There is something that I want you to focus on is that definitely and perhaps are going to follow the same rule and probably and maybe are going to follow another rule. We're going to see some examples as well as their explanation, okay? Let's go together to discover the rules of them. The first one that we're going to see is perhaps and maybe. Perhaps and maybe are usually placed at the beginning of the clause. I want you to notice the following word that I will highlight for you just in a second, and it's the word clause. What do I mean by the word clause? This one that you see over here. The word clause, it just means the sentence, okay? The sentence. And what's a sentence? A subject, a verb, and a complement. That's it. So anything, any sentence that you can think of is a clause. That's it, just clarification. So they are placed at the beginning of the sentence. That means that every time that I use perhaps, every time that I use maybe, I will put them at the beginning of the sentence. Okay, at the beginning. Always keep that in mind at the beginning. You have perhaps your parents must come, or maybe he could be late. If we talk about the meaning of these two sentences, it will be like saying in Spanish, quizás tus padres deban venir. O quizá él puede venir tarde. Okay? So the meaning of perhaps and maybe is exactly the same. Quizá. Okay? Quizá o tal vez. Maybe tal vez. Perhaps is quizás. That will be the meaning in Spanish. Your parents must come and maybe he could be late. Therefore, since we're talking about perhaps and maybe, we're saying how likely, que tan posible, is something to happen or a certain event to exist. That is basically it. Notice that they are always going to go at the beginning of the sentence. Not in the middle, not in the at the beginning. Keep that in mind. That is important. Really easy to understand. Probably and definitely, okay? These adverbs are placed before, notice this, the main verb, and after the verb to be, okay? After the verb to be. Let me show you something. Right now, I want to exemplify these to you with the following sentences, okay? So let's take a look at this. Imagine I have this document over here for work, and we're going to write the following. We're going to write the word. I don't know what does it write like that. But anyway. Let me try it again. Try it over here. So we're going to write subject plus verb complement, okay? Or maybe we're going to do a chart instead. It's going to be easier for you to see it in that way. So we're going to draw a table over here, and I want you to follow this with me, okay? Subject, verb, and complement. So we're going to have the chart. We're going to put over here. Get. Complement, okay? Subject, verb, and complement. These three things are the elements of a sentence. Son los elementos de la oración. Any sentence you can think of has these three elements, subject, verb, and complement, okay? Subject, verb, and complement. And what did we have in the explanation? Was that probably and perhaps go before the main verb or after the verb to be, okay? Before the main verb or after the verb to be. Let's go back to the document that we were working. So since I have a main verb, as I was explaining to you, let's go back to it. See? Just give me a second because right now there is an issue with this. Okay, so as I was telling you, we have the subject, the verb, and the complement. Imagine the following. Imagine that I have the subject, Gary, for saying something. Gary plays, let's say sport, let's say basketball. Gary plays basketball. That's the verb, that's the sentence, okay? Subject is the person, okay, of the sentence. Verb is the action that the person is doing in the sentences. Complement is extra information that you need. Okay, and the rule says that I will have the verb, or in this case, the adverb before the main verb. So now that you see what's the verb, remember the verb is the action, is the thing that the person is doing in the sentence. I will put this in red, and we can say, Gary, we are using, remember, probably indefinitely, definitely plays soccer, okay, basketball, sorry. Definitely plays basketball. So you see over here, definitely plays basketball. That means, let me change it so you can see it clearer. Okay, definitely plays basketball. So what we are seeing over here is that the adverb goes before the verb, okay? Va antes del verbo. Siempre va a ir antes del verbo, a menos que estemos usando el verbo to be. If I say, for example, Helen is angry, okay? Is angry, notice the difference. We're going to make it a little bit shorter so you can see better. Ellen is angry. ¿Qué tengo yo acá? I have the verb to be. Tengo el verbo to be, que son is, and are, in case you don't remember. So, the rule says that I will use definitely or probably before, I mean after the verb to be, okay? Luego del verbo to be. Siempre que tengan una oración is, am, y are, luego de eso yo voy a poner probably or definitely, okay? Si yo los quiero ocupar. I can say probably angry. Helen is probably angry. That will mean in Spanish, Helen está probablemente enojada, okay? So Gary definitely plays basketball. Helen is probably angry. If I have any other verb that is not the verb to be, the verb goes, the adverb goes before it. If I have the verb to be, the adverb goes after it. En pocas palabras, si yo tengo cualquier otro verbo que no sea el verbo to be, el adverbio va antes de este verbo. Y si yo tengo el verbo to be, el adverbio va a ir después de este adverbio. Simple y sencillo. Like that, and you won't get lost. Remember that concept, because in that way, you're going to learn how to do it. Let's see another example to understand it. I can say, like for example, Paul, it's done. We're going to see, doesn't it, doesn't it mean? And since I have a main verb that is not the verb to be, I can use the adverb before that. So we can say, Paul definitively doesn't eat meat. Or what it means in Spanish is, Paul definitivamente no come carne. Or let's change it up. We can say, Daniel, Ludwig are friends. We have this example. Let me do this smaller as well. So we have Daniel and Ludwig are friends, okay, are friends. What do we have over here? The verb to be one more time. Therefore, that means that I will have the adverb after the verb to be. Are probably friends, okay, are probably friends. Quiere decir, Daniel y Ludwig probablemente son amigos. That is the difference. So remember, if I have any other verb that is not the verb to be, it goes before. If I have the verb to be, it goes after. Remember that, and you're not going to get lost. So that is definitely and probably. And in the case of perhaps and maybe, remember they go at the beginning of any sentence you can think of. Then we have three modal verbs that we're going to study right now, and their equivalents. What do I mean by their equivalents? I talk about phrases that we use that they mean exactly the same as the modal verb. En pocas palabras, estoy hablando de una frase que significa lo mismo que el modal verb. Okay, remember, the modal verbs are not verbs, but they are auxiliaries, okay? No son verbos, pero son auxiliares. Eso quiere decir que como son auxiliares, la palabra can, la palabra have to y la palabra can't no van a llevar la S, no van a llevar S, no van a llevar ING, no van a llevar ED, no van a llevar nada de eso, okay? They are not going to have anything of that. They are just going to be can, can't, or have to all the time. You cannot say can't, you cannot say can, no. And finally, you have this example. You can swim here, and you are allowed to park here. These are called modal verbs of permission. And what do I mean by modal verbs of permission? Modals that I use to talk that you are permitted to do something, okay? Or that you're permitting a person do something. En pocas palabras, adverbios que le permiten a una persona hacer algo o decirle a alguien que tiene permitido hacer cierta acción. We have this example. You can swim here. Puedes nadar aquí. That will be the meaning in Spanish. And the last one, you are allowed to park here. Tienes permitido parquearte aquí. What's the difference between can and are allowed to? Nothing. They mean exactly the same. The only difference is that can is more informal and are allowed to is more formal, okay? That is the only difference. You have to fasten the seatbelt. In the case that you don't know what the seatbelt is imagine you are in a car, you take the seatbelt and you put it on. That's fastening the seatbelt. En pocas palabras, ponerse el cinturón de seguridad. You have to fasten the seatbelt, okay? You have to, tienes que, that's the meaning in Spanish. Tienes que ponerte el cinturón de seguridad. And then you have got to take off your shoes. That means in Spanish, tienes que quitarte los zapatos. What's the difference between have to and have got to? Nothing. They mean exactly the same. And they mean an obligation. They mean something that you should do. Son una obligación, significan algo que tienes o tenemos que hacer. What is the difference? Nothing. The difference is that have to is more formal and have got to is more informal. That is the only difference. And finally, we have modals of prohibition. Modals of permission are used to talk about something that is not permitted or something that is not allowed to do. Algo que no está permitido o algo que no se debe hacer. Like, for example, you can turn left. No puedes ir a la izquierda o no puedes ir hacia la izquierda. And then pets aren't allowed on this area, okay? Las mascotas no están permitidas en este lugar. Can't and aren't allowed mean exactly the same, that you're prohibiting an action to someone. Le estamos prohibiendo una acción a alguien. Let's see them more in detail. When we talk about the modals of permission, we're going to follow this structure. We saw already that the subject, remember, the subject, the people in this column over here, are the ones doing the action in the sentence. The modal verbs, the ones that are over here, are just the auxiliaries, okay? The auxiliaries. You have the first sentence. You can use casual clothes on Fridays. In Spanish, it means puedes usar ropas casuales los días viernes. So you see that you have the modal verb. And remember, the modal verb doesn't change. It doesn't include an S, it doesn't include ED, it doesn't include ING. Use casual clothes on Friday. Remember that after the modal verb, we normally have a verb, okay? Después de un modal verb, tenemos un verbo normal. ¿Y qué pasa con este verbo normal? Puede ser cualquier verbo. Por ejemplo, you can sleep, you can sing, you can dance, you can write, you can eat, you can drink, whatever you can imagine. And the difference is that these verbs are not conjugated, okay? They don't have any changes. Remember what I mentioned in the previous classes, the verb in the base form. Verbo en forma base quiere decir que el verbo, después del verbo modal, no va a tener cambios, no va a tener ing, no va a tener ed, no va a tener s, no va a tener nada de eso. Si yo tengo en una oración, you can swim here, no voy a poner you can swims, o no voy a poner you can swim, no. El modal y el verbo se quedan sin cambios. People can call as many times as they need. You see that call is the verb over here, okay? And you have can as the modal verb. Notice that they don't have changes. The only difference is here. We are allowed to film here, or Dylan and Jesse are allowed to travel abroad. Tenemos permitido filmar acá, o Dylan y Jesse tienen permitido viajar fuera del país. Notice that are allowed is not a modal verb. It's just a phrase. No es un verbo modal, es solo una frase. ¿Okay? Y como solo es una frase, yo no voy a ocupar un verbo después de él. Voy a ocupar esto. Esto se le conoce como infinitive. This is an infinitive. And what's an infinitive? Is any verb that you can think of with the word to. ¿Okay? Quiere decir, es cualquier verbo que podamos imaginar con la palabra to detrás. ¿Ok? Cuando usamos un infinitive, los infinitives no llevan ing, no llevan ed, no llevan s. Quiere decir que si yo pongo to filming, ¿ok? To film to films es un error. Yo nunca le voy a agregar nada en infinito. Siempre va a ser to y el verbo. Y ya está. And that's it. Nothing else to add. So therefore, when you're using the word can, you're going to have a verb after that. And when you're using the phrase are allowed, you're going to have an infinitive after that. Remember, that's important. Then we're going to talk about the models of obligation. We follow the same things. We have to be on time on Monday to Friday. Shelby and Jerry have to finish the project by Wednesday. My dad have got to work on holidays, and she has got to bring the pet to the park. We have the first one, have got to. Have to and have to. When we are using have to, in this case, we are going to use the verb in the normal form, okay? The base form of the verb. As I mentioned, el verbo sin ningún cambio. Remember that the verb is the action. We have to be on time. Aquí yo no puedo tener. We have to be con ing on time. That's a mistake. Or you cannot say we have to bid. No, that's a mistake as well. Doesn't change, okay? It doesn't change. It never changes. We have to finish a project on Wednesday. I cannot say we have to finishing the project on Wednesday. That's a mistake. Just keep the verb as it is. My dad has got to work on holidays. It means mi papá tiene que trabajar en vacaciones and she has got to bring the pet to the park. Ella tiene que traer la mascota al parque. What is the difference between have got to and have to? Nothing. The only difference is that this is more informal than this one, but they mean the same. My dad have got to work on holidays and she has got to bring the pet to the park. Notice that when I'm using the third person singular, like in these cases, there is a mistake over here. Don't pay attention to this one, but to this one. Cuando usamos la tercera persona singular, el verbo have va a estar en tercera persona. Quiere decir que no voy a usar have, sino que has. Every time that I have a third person singular, I will use has, okay? Like if I have she, he, or it, or the name, like for example, my brother, my sister, etc. So that is the only difference, okay? That is the only difference. See that in all of the phrases that we use when we are talking about models of the obligation, we are going to use the verb in the formal, in the regular form, or in the base form, or in the normal form, however you want to call it, but without any changes. And finally, we have models of permission, and the structure is the following. We have cannot and can't, that they mean the same. They mean no puedes o no tienes permitido. We cannot come with casual clothes to the event. No podemos venir con ropas casuales al evento. No podemos venir con ropas casuales al evento. That's the only thing. Notice that the cannot is not separated, and I want to show you this. In English, every time that you use the word can and not, okay, can and not, we are never going to separate it. For example, when you use the auxiliary does, you say does not, or did, you say did not. But when we are using can cannot be separated. We're going to say cannot together, like this, okay? Like this. I will put it in yellow so you notice the difference. Without any spaces in between, without separating the can and the not. They will always go together, okay? They will always go together. If in an exam, you write it separately, that's a mistake. Then you have the contracted form, la forma contractada, that is can't. The workers can't loaf around in the business hour. Loaf around means basically to waste time, perder el tiempo, okay? People are not allowed to smoke here, and she isn't allowed to park in front of the house. People are not allowed to smoke here, okay? Are not allowed to smoke here. No tienen permitido fumar acá, okay? No tienen permitido fumar acá. And she isn't allowed to park in front of the house, okay? Ella no tiene permitido parquearse enfrente de la casa. Notice that the same will happen. I will have, when I have the phrase allowed, I will have an infinitive. I will not have a verb. I will have an infinitive. I will have to plus the verb. They are not allowed to play. They are not allowed to dance. They are not allowed to laugh. She is not allowed to eat here. She's not allowed to take notes. She's not allowed to take photographies or something like that. And remember that since here we are using the third person singular, la tercera personal singular, I will change the are with the is because I'm talking about just one person. If you put in a sentence she are or he are, that's a total mistake. And remember that there are rules that we should follow. And with that, we're going to end this explanation of the topic of, remember, adverbs and modal verbs of obligation, permission, and prohibition. Now that we have seen the information and you know the explanation of this topic, you can work on these exercises. We're going to work on the unit 14. We're going to work on the first 5 exercises that are what does it mean, complete the sentences, what words you say, proverbs, and what do you think of these proverbs mean? That are pages 79, 80, 81, and 82. So after you finish watching the video, you can go to the platform. They are already there. En la sección de trabajo de clase y podemos encontrar el ejercicio. Realizamos los ejercicios del libro. Recuerden que cuando hacemos los ejercicios del libro, vamos a subir la foto de mi libro ya con los ejercicios completos a la plataforma. Okay? And with that, I will finish this video. I hope that this has been helpful for you to understand the topic. If you have any question, let me know, and I will gladly answer you as soon as I can. Bye-bye. Take care.